So, baseball. It's pretty clear to me, and it was clear basically as soon as the film started, the first time I saw it, that you were going for something much different than the typical sports movie, the typical baseball movie. So, can you talk to us at first just a bit about the genesis of this, getting into this, writing it?
Yeah, so I've played baseball my whole life, but I did quit for a long time. I think it was about a decade. I stopped playing. I stopped playing in high school. I moved to California. I was more interested in filmmaking for a long time. And in California, the weather's so nice you can play all year round. And I had this craving to go back and start playing. And I joined a league like the one here, an adult league. And I realized that the experience of playing a game at that age as an adult, it's very different from when you're in high school and it's very competitive and everyone's sort of, it's like a dick measuring contest, you know? Yeah, so it's like, and then it became just, it's a way to experience time with like-minded people, and it was very serene, I realized. It's like, there was no one's putting on airs, and I thought about the canon of baseball films and how none of them really capture the experience of actually playing, the feeling of playing the game. It's the only game without a clock of the major sports until recently when they added a pitch clock. So it is a poetic sense of time passing that you feel when you're playing the game. It's all about this sort of periods of stasis followed by sudden bursts of activity. And I really wanted to capture that feeling in a movie and give you the sense of what it's like to be, you know, amongst a collective of people and have that kind of third space where you share in a passion. So we started, you know, this was like the idea, the first idea I had that I really wanted to sink my teeth into and write it, because I've been a cinematographer for a while. Because I felt that this was a personal story to me. I understand it. This is a world I'm in. So, and I'm from New England, and like I said in the intro, I wanted to capture that, and I wanted to find a different storytelling form. And I felt, okay, let's just make it a game. We actually wrote this film as a box score alongside writing the script, so that we understood kind of the entire game action and how whether we're watching something on the field or on the sidelines, time was always being accounted for in some way, so that we really get a sense of time unfolding on an average Sunday in October.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned time, and I think what stood out to me watching it was just also this heavy sense of just social ritual. I think by the end, watching it, I just remember being kind of sad. You know, it gets darker out, and these guys, they keep playing, and it's the end of something. They're losing this field, and it felt like that was also a part of what you really wanted to put on display, that like all the minutiae was documenting something that they were losing, that it was just sort of disappearing.
Yes, there's an inevitability to it all. It's like time passes, things change, we have to deal with that. And this is a very particular, the way that all these guys relate to each other and to this game is very specific to this one time per week. And the way their relationship to each other is founded upon this game. And you get a sense at the end that there's some half-hearted attempts to reconnect in the off season, and they fall on deaf ears. I think I was trying to deal with a certain type of New England masculinity it's so bottled up and so repressed, and people, the difficulty for men and specifically adult men in New England to like form lasting friendships. It's a very isolating, suburbs can be a very isolating place, and especially as we lose green space with so much gentrification, even in small towns, like we're losing these sorts of experiences that have a very, like you said, a very specific language and colloquialisms. They'll just go away, you know? I grew up in New Hampshire in a time where I just remember so much time outside and being in parks and playing Little League and everything. And now I live in LA, and I'm like, there's so few parks that you can just go to. So I think I was trying to like preserve that feeling and mourn, the loss of these kind of places where you can have a relationship that goes beyond the grind of, the work week.
And a lot of, I think, this comes across because of the cast. You guys mentioned this in the intro, and I want to get more into it. The feeling among the cast, living together, working together. Tell us about the energy, Keith, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting for me, first of all. I mean, I played when I was younger. And I remember when he pitched this to me, and I'm going to start with that because I'm thinking, okay, all I have to do is play baseball. I can do that, right? I'm 61, not realizing what I can't do, right? But anyway, when I got there and then I saw everybody, these two teams were all living in one house. There was so much more to this baseball game. And I started to realize the connection behind baseball and community. It's a real thing. I mean, when you come home from work, the dog, greets you with a baseball in its mouth. You walk inside, you can't even hang your coat up. There's nothing but baseball memorabilia everywhere. Baseball bats, hats. Everywhere you go, baseball, baseball, baseball. But it's the connection. People, the way they bound together, and then if it wasn't for baseball, they wouldn't even know each other, or maybe walk by. But there was something about the dugout. Now, this dugout kind of opened everybody up. And I can't imagine these guys sitting around maybe 2 times a week, right? 2 times
Once a
week, once a week. They get together and they're bitching and moaning about whatever's going on in their life. But then I started to hear suggestions, and I couldn't help thinking the life problems that were solved in that dugout. Really, think about it, right? And it was just such an eye-opener how this game literally not only brought people together, but kept people together, and above and beyond. I mean, it's a real thing. What would we do without baseball? It's not even about the game. It's just about community, the connection, and it's about moving forward.
Having to say goodbye to all that.
Well, saying goodbye is another thing. Now, we're losing this field, okay? I think everyone's afraid to move forward, to let go. It's like, what are they going to do? That was my character, kind of lost. I gave up when Wayne Diamond comes to get me. Normally, I would have never left the game, okay? I never made a christening. Baseball came first. But here, there was not even a fight. I just looked back and I threw in the towel. But it's the idea of losing a part of you, And that was my take on the game, on this picture, on the overall playing baseball. It took on a whole different effect for me.
You said something about the dugout. I just want to build on. You said how the dugout brings out something in people. It reminds me of something Abbas Kiarostami said about the car as a space where you're looking ahead at life happening and you have to watch the road. So it allows for a certain transparency between people, emotional transparency, because there's something to distract you. And I think of the dugout as in a similar sense. There's always action out there, and everybody's sitting together. It can be like a confessional where there's a certain freedom to talk to one another, even if you're still talking through a veiled language of baseball, So that was on my mind.
And it all feels really natural as we're watching. It feels, I wondered about, was there much improvisation? Because there's this sense that these guys are shooting the shit. It's almost like sometimes the camera's rolling and these aren't the characters. These are
Yeah.
we're just watching you guys. So I wondered about that.
Yeah, we wrote this script very diligently. Myself, my co-writers Mike Basta and Nate Fisher, It was a very collaborative experience, and we all really cared about kind of these, like, building to these punchlines. Like, there's a lot of these scenes have a sort of set up punchline structure, so a lot of the lines were very important to us. But as I realized as we got into it, and people were living together and building a chemistry that went beyond anything we could have hoped for, that it would be silly to just stick to it like a Bible. So, everyone being together allowed for deviations from the script, and even some scenes that we didn't even plan started to emerge. Not everything made the final cut. It's like a whole other movie we could make with the B-roll that didn't get in, but we allowed them to play, right? You would say? Yeah, we played around.
Yeah. Well, look, my experience there, and like you were saying, okay, the script was written well. He knew what he was going for. Nobody else did, but he knew. And normally I have an idea of what we're doing, but I just had no clue. But as we bonded, it was easier for the script we kind of, embraced it. It was written really well. Like he said, there was some improv that they may have kept. There was a lot of improv they wanted to keep, but like I said, that's dangerous territory. But we had a lot of good times on that set, and this is probably one of the movies, one of the jobs that I worked that I will never forget. We did have some good times, though. We had a pitching machine, right, that we hot-wired. The only problem was it was taking the skin off the ball. So you had a ball of string by the time it got to the outfield.
The wiring, you must have fucked up the wiring in some way. Because that ball was coming out like 120 miles an hour. Straight into the air.
I played Mr. Fix-It, and I got it to work, but not entirely.
When we got to the set and we had to do some modifications to this field that really exists. I mean, we that first day, it was before we shot, a few days before we shot, Keith came up from New York, and next thing I know, I'm looking at the press box and he's dangling off it, trying to move aside, because you worked on high rises here in New York, so he knows how to do that. But of course, I'm freaking out.
Yeah, I was 2 stories in the air, and he's not happy. So, but yeah, I mean, it felt very much like the real thing. Like we were all trying to get this field together and make it all happen. It was very personal. So yeah, getting into character, I think everything we did to prep the field kind of got everybody into character. I mean, it was perfectly played. I'll give him that. And I for one appreciate being part of it.
There's also just like this quietly impressive technical feat of the continuity of the light, and I just wondered, how long were you guys filming? Because it's really impressive, like the way that the film transitions from day to night, and the way that like the images are consistent and the moods are consistent. It's very hard.
That's very, very important to me, and thank you. The capturing that transition it's almost like one of my first inspirations for making the film. I really wanted to feel that in a movie. So we had the field about a year before we actually started shooting. So I had a lot of time to go there and kind of study how the light falls. And as we got closer to October, which is when we shot, I was there so much, and I shot a lot of photo. I basically shot every frame of the film, and then we later composited it and put, like, in Photoshop, we kind of created each frame. Myself and my DP, Greg Tango, and then my AD, Michael Bossa, we were just like, the scheduling was so rigorous and so difficult. And then, of course, life was throwing curveballs at us with the rain and everything. So we had to adjust almost every day. But what was so important was making sure that the sun was in the right place, so that it felt like the shadows were consistent moment to moment. And then also shooting in wider master shots and trying to choreograph these bodies around the frame, while also allowing for there to be this like spontaneity, because you never really know what you're going to get with guys who haven't played in sometimes like 40 years, some of them, or ever. So you didn't really know what you were going to get, but we're trying to maintain that balance between the composed and the spontaneous, while also keeping the time consistent. So it was a big challenge. And then we shot the entirety of October, basically. The final scenes were shot in the first few days of November, and the final leaves were falling off the trees. So it was limiting where we could actually shoot, and we were kind of, otherwise it would just be a bunch of dead trees. So the foliage consistency was very tough too. We kind of like early October, we were mostly shooting dugout scenes. We wouldn't have to see the foliage. It was a lot, but one location allows for, again, like sort of this compression of everyone's attention. And also, it allows you to, it's very economical, I would say.
And my last question before opening it to the audience, can you talk to us about Spaceman for the people who don't know about the significance of, Yeah.
The character who comes in, I think it's around the 6th inning. He comes in, he takes over for Mr. Pridemore over here. Raise your hand. He plays Troy, the River Dogs pitcher, and he's a little too drunk at one point. And Santa.
There you go.
There it is.
Don't get scared now.
So I needed. I basically got Bill Lee attached very early on, and I don't think I've told you this, but he almost was your character. He was almost going to be Ed. I mean, he was going to be Ed. But he's a loose cannon, so it never would have happened. I said it last night that I still don't know if Bill knows what this movie is. I think he thinks it's a documentary about the Eephus pitch and about him. He knew we were there for a whole month, and he only came on one day, but I still think he believes that. So Bill Spaceman Lee is a former pitcher. For the Red Sox and a few others, the Montreal Expos when they existed. Pitched in the World Series, famously through the Eephus pitch, and was also famously somewhat unorthodox. He's actually on the cover of High Times, one issue of High Times. I think you sensed that in the movie. So we wrote lines for him, and he didn't listen. He went with his own stuff, and it's like sometimes better than anything we could have written. So he came in, and we wanted that blast of novelty in the movie, and also to have this sort of like sage elder figure in white. I was thinking about Prairie Home Companion, the Altman film, and the who's the actress? Shit. Is it? She's like the ghost of the theater, and she's wearing white, and she's floating around the periphery. Anyway, I was thinking about that figure, but I wanted this like mythical figure from baseball history to emerge, and we don't quite say it's him, but it's him. His involvement was really key to kind of even just making this movie happen. In New England, people get excited about his name, and
Questions from the audience?
I loved how it sounded. Lawnmowers, AM radio, the insects. Even like when the car horn started going off, I was like, oh, that's just somebody in the parking lot. I didn't think it would like come into play. Could you talk a little bit how you thought about sound when creating this?
Yeah, it's like a cathedral. There's so much happening all around you, and we designed the mix as 5.1 surround sound so that, especially last night in Alice Tully, because it's so big, there were corners of the theater that would laugh at something like an off-screen line that the front corner wouldn't have the same experience, and I like that. Everyone has a little bit of a different experience with the film, but there's just so much ambient noise at a baseball game in a suburban park, anything like that. It's just that it's very stimulating to me, and I want to just capture that feeling of lounging in a park, and like, I don't know, just it's just pleasant to me. But you're right. I mean, so much banter is happening in a baseball game at all times and at all corners so wherever the camera was situated, we had to like make everything relative to that, mix it all, perspectivize all the audio. So it felt like, okay, if I'm on the mound and the shortstop's over there, we got to hear him over there, and a lot of these laugh lines are ambient. and when we deliver the film, we're always getting it flagged. They're always saying, well, it's not center channel, so it's not right, but like, no, that's intentional, so yeah, it's definitely an unorthodox mix, but it's important, I think, to feel that spatial audio, because that's what it feels like to be on a field.
One thing I was curious about is how much of those characters were in the script and how much did you discover? Because I think it's really interesting that you have 9 people on each team and every character is so bright. How much was discovered through like the casting process?
So much. I mean, yeah, it was very important to me that everyone had a moment in this film, that it didn't feel like anyone was being prioritized over anyone else. I really wanted that democratic focus. I mean, this was cast half of it through backstage with actors I'd never worked with before, half of it through actors I had worked with before, and then also some just hometown friends that I thought would be great in a film. And it's always what drives me to them is like the face first and foremost. I get on and then the voice tells me something. And of course the trick with this is that I thought they needed some sort of athletic prowess. As it evolved, I realized that wasn't so easy. And especially when you're casting remotely and you're trying to ask someone to like throw a ball over a Zoom, it's like, it doesn't tell you much. So we kind of gave up on that, and that's when I really embraced this as a film about like amateurs who are just enthusiasts rather than former pros or something. But no, I think them living together and developing that bond, and I really tried to give everyone the leeway to form their own character to some extent, to play within the script and develop bonds as teammates. I felt like a coach, actually. Like the coach can only control so much. His players are going to form bonds, and whether it's athletic bonds or personal bonds, and that kind of happened, and I just tried to guide it. And the bonds are very, very strong. We just played a game on the East River at a park in Lower East Side, Manhattan, where Keith grew up playing Little League.
Yeah,
We just played.
I played Little League on that field. Yeah, I did. I played Little League on that field.
So we all got together the other day. Keith was there.
And we had a great time.
He had
We
an
really
infield
did.
hit. So yeah, everybody's still. It's like if you had gone to this game, it's like the movie, And we could go shoot a sequel to your point earlier. I don't know if anyone wants that, but that's how tight.
No, I mean everybody wanted to know who was actually going to win. So everybody, we found we lost, right? We lost, right?
We lost.
Yeah, it's his fault.
Oh no.
The baseball player. But we did have a good time. Everybody got to play, crew, cast, and like you said, it felt very much like the film. Everyone just had a good time. And then we went out and beat ourselves up a little more, and right, we had a good time. Yeah, it was just like the game, just the way the film played out. One big community.
One last quick question.
Keep it short.
About the scorekeeper umpire, because I listening to you, I sort of feel as though I was making too much of the ending when he walked away and seemed so lonely while everyone was driving off to their lives, and I wonder sort of how you thought about him. And
Oh yeah, there's a dedication at the end of the film to Frances Franny Whitford, who is a townie from my hometown of Nashua, New Hampshire, who was I recall him being at every Little League game and every high school game, and he was always there, and he was someone who was always he was a man about town, and he was a peculiar figure, but there was a mystery to him, and I'd say a loneliness that this character was inspired by. I departed quite a bit from the actual person, and so Franny, played by Cliff Blake, who's a longtime collaborator of mine. I think he's a brilliant presence on screen, such an evocative face, and as I got into editing, I realized that he's sort of like the heart and soul of the film in a way, as someone who has internalized the importance of baseball to this community, and it's so important to him, and he memorializes it in these score books like it's a living record of history of his history, even though it's seemingly trivial. And I just found that very touching. And as we were in post and I'm realizing how important he is to the film, the character or the actual person passed away due to COVID complications. And I just felt I needed to dedicate the film to him. And yeah, the structure actually shifted a bit. It became bookended by Franny coming out of the woods and going back into the woods. You don't know where he's going. It's sort of like Field of Dreams or something. They come out of and I didn't realize that until after either. But yeah, he's to me the emotional core of the film. And I think he really believes it when he says today when he quotes Lou Gehrig, like he really believes it's the most beautiful day or luckiest man. Sorry, I'm forgetting the own. Yeah, he believes he's the luckiest man for having witnessed this, for having been a part of this. So I think that maybe answers your question.
Well, thank you to both of you so much and for this film. It was really great.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.